Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are on ayah number 107 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. Okay, so vocabulary, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ, do you not know? And this question form has a purpose. The purpose is not to inquire. We said that's impossible. But the purpose of this question is to establish a fact, because you may establish a fact by asking a question whose answer is obvious. So it's a more eloquent way of establishing a fact, that to Allah belongs the mulk, dominion of the samawat, plural of sama. Sama means highness, and oftentimes it means sky, but originally it simply means highness. So when we say Allah is in the sama, it does not mean Allah is in the sky, it means Allah is in the highness. This is not a particular location, but it is just a direction. Allah has the direction of highness. Anyway, He owns the dominion of the samawat, so this would be the 7 layers of the sky. We are underneath the first layer, and then there are 7 samawat layers. And He owns that and all that which is in it. Wal ard, and He's talking about this planet, Earth. And He says, besides Allah, you will not have a wali. And this means an ally. This refers to somebody who will bring about benefit for you. Generally, the word wala, when you're allied with someone, has this idea of mahabba wal qurb wal nasr, love, closeness and help. Wala nasir, and you will not have a nasir. This means helper, but in this context it means somebody who will ward off a harm from you. So the wali brings about a benefit and the nasir wards off a harm. Otherwise, wali and nasir are very close in meaning. So reflecting on this ayah, we can pick up fairly obviously that Allah Jalla wa Ala has full control over His creation, whether in the heavens or the earth. And so this is His Tawheed al-Rububiyyah that He's speaking of. And Tawheed al-Rububiyyah immediately implies Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, that Allah alone is worthy of worship then, not these other false gods. Now it is true that man also owns certain things, but man's ownership is limited, whereas Allah's is unlimited, both in terms of what He owns and in terms of what He can do with His wealth. There are also limits to that as well. We may learn that asking a fairly obvious question is a more eloquent way of establishing and confirming a fact. It is more imaginative than just simply stating a declarative sentence. We also find the clear-cut lesson that besides Allah you will not have any wali nor a nasir. However, we find an ayah that apparently contradicts this when Allah Jalla wa Ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَيَّدَكَ بِنَصْرِهِ وَبِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He aided you with His nasr, with His help, and with the mu'mineen. This is in Surah Al-Anfal. So that means the mu'minun are helping the Prophet. So can somebody other than Allah be a nasir to you? The answer is, if somebody else does help you, then this is a sabab or a cause. It is not an independent helper. The only independent helper, who is not controlled by anything else or anyone else, is Allah Jalla wa Ala. Just like taking a medicine. The one who heals you is Allah Jalla wa Ala, but it's through the sabab or the cause of the medicine. So ultimately, the independent healer is Allah Jalla wa Ala, not the medicine. The medicine is a cause. So anyone who helps you is a sabab, but the independent helper, who does not rely on anyone else, is Allah Jalla wa Ala. That's why, even if you ask somebody for help, your heart is reliant on Allah, not on the person helping you. When you take medicine, your heart is reliant on Allah, not on the medicine per se. So that you're relying on the fact that Allah will heal you through the medicine. However, the big question that we have to ask about this ayah is, do you not feel that this ayah is somewhat odd in the context of the ayat which we have been discussing. Allah Jalla wa Ala has been speaking about Banu Israel, and then He has turned our attention to speaking about the mu'mineen and addressing the speech to them. He has been speaking about specific matters, yet this ayah is just a generic ayah speaking about the rububiyyah of Allah Jalla wa Ala, something that is obvious and known from the fitrah. So this ayah is generic, whereas the previous ayat have been pointed and specific. This makes this ayah somewhat out of place, at least on first thought anyway. So the question is this ayah linked to the context of the previous ayat? And this is what tests your ability to reflect. When you look at this ayah, reflect on it, and try to link it to the previous ayat in context, if you have reflected properly, you will find that there is a link between this ayah and the last. The last ayah spoke about naskh, and also the background of that was that the Yahud denied the naskh. We spoke about that in the previous track. The reason why Allah Jalla wa Ala speaks about this rububiyyah of His, if Allah Jalla wa Ala is unique in His rububiyyah and that the whole dominion belongs to Him, then why should it come as a surprise that Allah abrogates certain ayat with newer ayat? After all, the whole dominion belongs to Him. He can do as He wills in accordance with His wisdom. So one should not argue against this idea of Allah making abrogation. This is the link. Ayah 108. أَمْ تُرِيدُونَ أَن تَسْأَلُوا رَسُولَكُمْ كَمَا سُئِلَ مُوسَى مِنْ قَبْلُ وَمَنْ يَتَبَدَّلِ الْكُفْرَ بِالْإِيمَانِ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. Is a question, or تُرِيدُونَ want, أَن تَسْأَلُوا رَسُولَكُمْ to ask your messenger, meaning Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, كَمَا سُئِلَ مُوسَى مِنْ قَبْلُ, as Musa was asked before. يَتَبَدَّل means to exchange. Kufr bil iman, so you take kufr and you give away iman, so you make that exchange. Faqad, then he has indeed, this is an emphatic form. Dhalla, gone astray from. Sawa as-sabil, sawa meaning straight, and sabil meaning path or way. Okay, so the words of this ayah are not too difficult to understand, but what is this ayah referring to? Like we said, this is the most difficult part of understanding the Quran, is that you are left wondering what are the words or the concept actually referring to. It has also been said that this ayah is asking the mushrikeen, because the mushrikun also used to ask the Prophet for various miracles. And it has also been said that it refers to the Yahud, because the Yahud also asked the Prophet ﷺ for miracles. In any case, this ayah is prohibiting asking certain types of questions. What type of questions? Questions of ta'annut, when you ask somebody to make life difficult for them or to corner them. Just like the episode with the slaughtering of a cow, how they asked Musa a.s. useless questions. This was not to act upon, but rather this was to make life difficult for Musa a.s. It also pertains to the type of questions about matters which have not yet happened, or maybe not likely to happen, because it may be the case that the matter becomes prohibited because of your asking the questions. And we have the authentic hadith about this in the Sahih as well. The greatest wrongdoer amongst the Muslimin is the one who asks questions about a matter which was not haram, but it became haram because of his asking the question. Now admittedly, this does not apply to us nowadays because the wahi has stopped, so nothing can become haram which was not haram from before. Nevertheless, we should refrain from asking too many questions about matters which are unnecessary. When we ask questions, they should be with a view to acting on them. They should be practical questions. We find this in the Quran as well. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ, they ask you about khamr and gambling. And there are many other such ayat as well, where Allah says they ask you about such and such. So these are practical questions to learn and to act upon. They are not questions about a matter which has not yet happened or not likely to happen, but rather you can ask questions about a matter which has happened or is imminently likely to happen. For example, when the Prophet was asked about if a man catches his wife committing adultery, what should he do? If he keeps quiet, this is a great matter, but if he talks about it, this is also a great matter because he's exposing this embarrassing sin and bringing shame on his household. What should he do? The Prophet did not like such a question because the matter has not happened and is not likely to happen in the future. And it so happens that this problem did become a reality for the questioner, and the ayah of li'an was revealed. As for Musa alayhi salam, he was asked many nonsensical questions like the situation of the cow, but also other things like show us Allah openly, and such matters which are of no consequence and do not have a practical bearing. And for us as well, if we want to ask a fatwa, ask about a matter which has already happened or is imminently likely to happen. And ask genuine questions, not a question to try to corner the scholar. Or maybe fatwa shopping, as they say, trying to find the easiest answer from different people. So these are not genuine questions. In a fatwa situation, you're not going to ask the scholar, "Oh scholar, if a massive meteorite smashes into the moon and destroys it, then how do we decide when Ramadan begins?" This is a hyper-theoretical matter. It has not happened. It is not imminently likely to happen. You do not ask about such things in a fatwa situation. So we may take from this ayah to only ask useful questions. Questions which will benefit you, which you can act upon. Questions which will enhance your knowledge. Not questions which are hyper-theoretical. Or questions of ta'annut. We may take that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to learn from the mistakes of the previous nations, so that we do not treat our Prophet like Banu Israel treated Musa alayhi salam. We learn of the great danger of exchanging iman for kufr, and that this is plain misguidance. The link to the last part of the ayah to the first part of questioning may be that asking these useless questions facilitates you embracing kufr and leaving off iman. Another link can also be that if you ask a question and do not act upon it, then that can also facilitate your embracing kufr and leaving off iman. Let's look at ayah number 109. وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ كُفَّارًا حَسَدًا مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الْحَقُّ فَاعْفُوا وَاصْفَحُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. So vocabulary, wadda, we have taken this word before, to love or to want something to happen. Many, kathir, from the Ahl al-Kitab. So this means that from them are those who are not so aggressive in their enmity towards you, but many of them are. And many of them would love. The word law, they say, is masdariya. So that when he says law yaruddunakum, it means rududakum, you're turning away from iman. Kuffaran, the plural of kafir. So they want you to become kuffar, as in leave the deen of Islam. Why is this? Hasadan. Hasad means when you simply dislike that another person is enjoying a ni'mah. And hasadan is mansub with a fatha because it is maf'ul li ajlih. In other words, it's the reason for the fi'l, for the verb being wadda. So they love for you to leave the deen. Why is that? Out of hasad. So the maf'ul li ajlihi is mansub. Min 'indi anfusihim, from themselves. So this gives us the idea that the hasad is actually ingrained in their selves. And this is their evil, impure selves. After the truth has become clear to them, what truth is this? What does it refer to? The advent of the last prophet. This is the manifestation of the prophecy in the Torah and the Injil. So this truth of the prophecy has become manifest to them. They cannot deny it intellectually, except that their desires do not conform to this truth. Now the next two words, fa'fu, from afa ya'fu. This means to not punish them. They say afa al-athar. The mark was afa, meaning wiped away. So it's like you wipe away their sins and not punish them. As for wasfahu, then this can actually mean the same thing, and some people said that there are two words that mean practically the same thing. However, if we want to make a distinction, we would say that wasfahu, from safh, meaning the side, it comes from safhatul unuq, the side of your neck. So it's like you show them the side of your neck. In other words, you turn completely away from them until Allah brings His amr, His order or His command. So again, what is this referring to? It's referring to the command to fight the kuffar. And Allah is able to do all things. Okay, let's reflect on this. We can take the deep-rooted enmity that many of the Ahlul Kitab have. They want us to become murtadun, which means apostates. We find from this ayah one of the most dangerous qualities that can be found in a human being, which is hasad. The biggest victim of the hasad is the hasid, the one who is envious, because this hasad will consume you like a fire that consumes firewood. Now, how does one rid himself of hasad? There are at least two ways. First way is obvious. Make dua to Allah Jalla wa Ala to cleanse you of hasad. Because hasad ultimately is from the heart, and guess who's in control of the hearts? So the matter is obvious. Make sincere dua. And the second step that can be taken is if you feel any envy towards someone else, do the complete opposite of envy. Make dua of barakah for them. May Allah increase them in their ni'mah, rather than feeling, oh Allah, take this ni'mah away from this person, or feeling a hatred. Do the complete opposite of what you're feeling. Imagine the hasad is the fire. You put the fire out with cold water. We may also take an interesting point from this ayah, is that if the Ahlul Kitab have hasad towards the Muslimin, then this has to mean that the kuffar know deep inside that Iman is a good thing. Because you only have hasad against that which is good. You never have hasad against that which is bad. That's why you do not find anyone envying poor people living in the streets. So deep down inside, the Ahlul Kitab and other kuffar, they know that there is something special in this deen of Islam. They know it deep down inside. And if we know that they have hasad, then we are going to keep our guard up. This is the practical benefit of this knowledge. We learn our lesson to keep patient with the kuffar and their harms until you are in such a position to be able to fight, because fighting before you are ready to do so is contrary to hikmah. Wallahu a'lam.